Basketball is one of the most popular sports across the world today. But where did it originate from? Who first played it? And how did it get so popular? Today, I'll give you a brief history of basketball. You see, I watch and participate in the sport frequently, but I once never questioned to myself, where did it come from? Today, the sport of basketball is quicker and rougher than it was 40 years ago. But what most people don't know is that it was much more intense before. Over the years, the game of basketball has changed drastically, since the brink of the sport to the era it became popular and the way it's played in modern times today. But after hearing this, you'll question yourself. If LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Derrick Rose, even old school players like Michael Jordan, who's number one supposedly, can even last 1 second with those who really played basketball. Now, to get a feeling of the history of basketball, we need to go back in time, thousands of years ago, so we can get the idea of where the idea of throwing a sphere into a circular object and declaring it a point came from. Well, thousands of years before the game of basketball, the Mexican and Central American native athletes played a game very similar to the modern basketball, according to Melissa Abramovitz, who wrote an article in The Boy's Life called Extreme Hoops. Now, those Mexican and Central American natives didn't play the sport for fame and money and other luxuries as it is played today, but for a more drastic reason. For the reason to live, or to the losers who lost that game today, was the reason to be sacrificed to the gods. Sounds pretty intense. Gets more intense. The basketball, as they know it, wasn't a basketball as we know it today. The ball was actually a leather ball with a few ounces of cement in it, making it pretty heavy, but was the size of my palm. Yeah, almost like a typical wall ball. And the rim, the hoop, whatever you may call it, theirs was twice the size of my palm. Yeah, and it was about 20 feet higher than a regular rim today. And they played it for the reason of living, to see their family the next day. If those who lost, those got sacrificed to the gods for a good cause. It is what they believed and it is what they did. Now, they played the game as if it was their last. So, we are grateful that the game of basketball today is that it is right now. Now, it changed, of course, because in Massachusetts, 1891, Dr. James Naismith asked the janitor to nail a peach basket on the balcony of the gym he would coach at. The basket was 10 feet high, the janitor not knowing how tall it was, just randomly placed it there, and the objective was to throw a soccer ball into the basket and declaring it a point. Now, that game was only created because at that day, outside was too cold. The weather was too cold for any kid to play soccer. Like any good coach, he brought them inside and they played soccer indoors, but really didn't have any goals out there. So Dr. James created this game with the peach basket and the soccer ball out of mere thin air. No idea whatsoever. But according to Melissa Abramazzi, again, in Boy's Life, some believe that Dr. Naismith was aware of the ancient sport and Central American and Mexican natives played. But most scholars say he merely dreamed the game. Funny how you dream a multi-millionaire, sport association in one day. Now that we know where and who came up with the ideas of basketball, let's move on to how the sport later turned out to be. So, after the rediscovery of basketball, Dr. James Naismith, the sport later spread rapidly across the USA. Now, according to Peter C. Barkman, the author of the biographical history of basketball, since there was no radio or television in 1891, people had to learn about basketball only by spreading it. And so they did. Fathers told their sons, sons told their friends, friends told their family, and family told their cousins, and so on. But according to Pamela Grundy, author of Shattering Glass, it spread so quickly that the first female basketball game was played in 1892 in Springfield, Massachusetts at a local YMCA, the same gym where Dr. Naismith came up with the idea of basketball. Now, not only did it spread that fast, but by the 1920s, the BEA and the NBL were created. The BEA being Basketball Association of America, and the NBL being National Basketball League. In 1949, it was created and later merged in 1949 and created the NBA as we know it today. The creation of the NBA ultimately added more rules to the sport, making it the NBA we know today. And I hope you learned many things about the sport of basketball today. We've learned that the sport really wasn't invented in the 1890s as we thought, but rather been lost for thousands of years and rediscovered, only to be much more entertaining for all. Now keep in mind the question that I asked you before. Would any basketball player today be able to keep up with our natives back then?